Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look at a Cold War classic. A VZ-58 rifle. Wait a minute. Actually, it's a CZH 2003 Sport. Wait, what are those black marks? Actually, unfortunately, this one has been deactivated. Now, before you shut off the video, let me tell you some very interesting history about this firearm. So the CZH 2003 Sport was originally imported into Canada by two importers, Delask Arms and Marstar Canada. They were imported in fairly small quantities in both two classifications, non-restricted and restricted. This particular one has a shorter barrel, about 15.5 inches, meaning that it was restricted. Now you're probably wondering, why in the world is this nice firearm deactivated? Well, as many of you are probably aware, the Liberal government on May 1st, 2020 banned over 1,500 different models of firearms. This one was included in that. This particular CZH 2003 Sport was owned by an older gentleman at that time. Shortly after May 2020, the older gentleman passed away. Since there are no grandfathering provisions in the Order in Council gun ban, there were only two options for this firearm. 1, destroy. 2, deactivate. The executors of the old man's will decided to deactivate one of their only two options. Hence, it is now a deactivated Cold War classic. Now let me share with you some very interesting history about this firearm. As some of you may know, the CZH 2003 Sport firearms were imported by Delask Arms and Marstar Canada. They were made from leftover parts from former Czechoslovakia and their military-issued full automatic VZ-58 rifle, which essentially this firearm is. As you can see here, this firearm was originally made by the Czechoslovakian Army, 1961. Right there, you can see the crossed swords and the old serial number. That means that this particular firearm was made in 1961 in Czechoslovakia. Now it's kind of hard to see, but on the top of the receiver here, you can see a little stamp that says 78. That stamp means that this firearm was, quote, returned to the arsenal for repair in 1978. That means that this exact gun was a functioning, fully automatic VZ-58 rifle in the year 1978. Very interesting. After the Cold War, many of these firearms were stripped down for parts and sold to importers. CZH bought this firearm and assembled it into a civilian semi-automatic only version and sold and imported them into Canada for civilian target shooters. Since this firearm was recently deactivated, it's obviously been deactivated to the most modern standard of deactivation. That means the barrel has been plugged and welded over. That means the bolt face has been removed. It also means the bolt carrier and bolt have been welded in place. However, there are several parts on this firearm that are still accessible, like the dust cover on the front. Simply pull this pin, flip this up, and the dust cover can come off. Piston is still in place. In fact, the piston is turnable, so they didn't weld that in place. Okay, there's that back on. Let's look at the rear dust cover. Push this pin over. Rear dust cover comes off. Inside we can see several locations of welding. They welded up the trigger group parts. It's basically all that you can see from this angle. The trigger is seized back. Awesome. Let's have a look now at the magazine. So, this is actually a deactivated magazine as well. As you can see, one side has been chopped off and the floor plate has been welded halfway down. If you're wondering what that paper is, that's the official deactivation notice I keep with this firearm at all times. In here we can see several spots of welding where they welded the bolt to the receiver. Remember, they also welded a plug in the barrel and removed the bolt face. Otherwise, externally, the only way to tell that this is a deactivated firearm is by those two little black marks on the outside. One other interesting thing to notice is the original 30, meaning full automatic, is still on the firearm. On some other imported models of this firearm, such as the CZ858, that 30 has been ground out and you can only see the number 1. I also have a original magazine pouch here. Happens to have 4 mags in it. But you can see this is an original military magazine pouch made in 1970. Cross swords there. Also have a bayonet. Original bayonet scabbard. It's kind of hard to see, but there's also a stamp. Crossed swords on the bayonet scabbard. That scabbard was made in 1971. Original bayonet. Slides right onto the firearm. And folks, that is a very quick overview of this very interesting piece of Cold War classic history. Once a functioning, fully automatic VZ58 rifle in Czechoslovakia, sold and modified to be a semi-automatic only civilian model for Canada, finally, under draconian order, deactivated, now A very interesting piece of wall hanger history. Thanks for watching, folks.